Please welcome Alejandro Fuentes-Mena and Zenen Perez.
I'm grateful to share my modus monologue as part of this strategic conversation on dismantling white supremacy and systems that perpetuate injustice. You can listen to mine and other monologues from Modus Theater's Undocu America project tour on our Shoeback Stories podcast. I was just a kid when I realized what being undocumented meant. At age 8, I started going to work with my dad so I could help him rebuild the entire outside of other people's homes, all the while not having a real home of our own. I would help my dad research what to charge and work out all the math. For example, I would discover that for one given job, contractors would charge him $20,000. But my dad had been screwed over so many times that he would only charge $15,000. Clients would see his strength in Spanish, his lack of English and documented status, and give him about $10,000. And that is who my father believed he was. Half the man I thought he was, half the value of any other. I witnessed as my mother would leave for an entire weekend, 72 hours, to take care of someone else's family. She was lured with the promise of being paid over $300 for the weekend, but she would come back with only $100 in her pocket. $100 that she saw as a blessing. $100 that I saw as an attack on our family. All those rich white families saw little value in everything my mom did for them. They would take her away only to use her and spit her out. The money they paid was barely enough for food on the table. It didn't cover the worry my mom had because she couldn't be home to take care of us when we were sick, help us with homework, comfort us when we returned to an empty house. $100 for a whole weekend away from her family, like she was worthless? But don't you understand that she was priceless to me? Well, spending my weekends without my mom, as she cared for other people's children, and spending those weekends working for my dad for free, so he wouldn't lose out any money for the privilege of building a home for someone else's family, and witnessing this over and over and over again, I began to think that maybe I wasn't worth much either. Despite the fact that I had been recognized at school as gifted and talented, despite the fact that I was a math whiz and learned English, a completely unknown language, in less than a year, and that I was an engaged student, despite the fact that I was a precocious worship leader at my church, I let those weekends of feeling worthless affect me. I began making jokes rather than making plans for my future, playing games rather than paying attention, chasing girls rather than chasing my dreams, and like all self-fulfilling prophecies, I got to the point where my grades reflected exactly what society said my parents and I were worth. Half-priced human beings. Luckily, I had a teacher, Ms. Kovacic, who worked hard to remind me of my value and helped convince me that what this society was telling me and my family was wrong. With her support and that of many others, I got myself out of that pit of self-deprecation, past the insecurities, past the hate, past the negativity, past that half version of me, and into a good college, into a position where I am now an educator who teaches math. And like my mentors, I teach young children their value because all children are valuable, just as you and I are valuable. As a teacher, I can't help myself. Let me take y'all to school for a few moments. Hope you're good with that. Let's start off with a little math lesson. My father is one man, one of the hardest workers I know. My mother is one woman, one of the strongest and most compassionate individuals in my life. My sister is one daughter, a brat, but a lovable one, and an American citizen. And I am one son, half of this country and half of Chile. And we are four whole, beautiful gifts, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, not the half-priced individuals that society has attempted to make us. Moving to applied math and economics. If this country continues to deport the undocumented community, it is missing out on courageous, strong, intelligent, family-loving, hardworking people of great value. And that is not only our loss. It is your loss to miss out on us. Not to mention the billions in taxes we bring in every year, which, by the way, is billions more than large corporations are paying. Lastly, moving beyond math to ethics. Paying an undocumented person half of their value for their life's work, extracting all you can get to build your homes and take care of your families, and then deporting them as if they had not brought value. It's not just mathematically flawed, it is also an American math story problem gone wrong. It is criminal to treat us as subservient and less desirable. I am living in this country undocumented, teaching your children, supporting them, engaging their minds in math and in their dreams. I'm 100% here, and I'm 100% committed to this country in which I was raised, this country that constantly seeks to spit me out. Lose me, and you lose my value, not just the money I pay in taxes and money I pay into Social Security that I will never benefit from, but you lose my ability to inspire, connect, and engage. You lose my ability to bring an impact, and you lose the knowledge I bring to my students who are your children. This country would be foolish to lose me. Deport me. Deport me, but in the end, it's your loss.
Thank you so much, Alejandro. Our loss indeed. Next, I'd love to welcome Zenen Perez.
Hello there. Thank you. Thank you so much, Cheryl. And thank you so much, Alejandro, for your beautiful words. And thank you, everyone who's listening here today, as well as thank you, everyone who's made Netroots happen this year. You know, as a frequent attender, I was very surprised, but also just heartened to know that so many of us and so many of y'all still gathered this week in the past 3 days, despite all the challenges that our communities are facing. And to me, it just really fills my heart with joy to know that we're all still very activated and we're all very much ready to keep going, because I know that in my heart, you know, we have a big battle ahead of us in the next coming 2-3 months. But I know that this is going to be a long fight and it's going to need each and every one of us. And thank you, Alejandro, for your energy. And thank you, Cheryl, for everything that you bring to the movement, because it's definitely an inspiration for me and for millions of others. As Cheryl said, my name is Zenen Jaimes Perez. I work for an organization called the Texas Civil Rights Project. And what we do is that we organize in my home state on the front lines with our communities to fight for asylum seekers, to stop the border wall, to ensure that people can cast a ballot this November, and to fight and destroy the carceral system that locks up more Black and brown people in my state than any other state in the country. But this conversation today is really about movements, right? And the long arc that we're fighting here. So I want to talk a little bit about my movement story that really started when I was 2 years old. When I was 2 years old is when my parents crossed the border in Arizona and their journey to a new life and landed in Central Texas, where I grew up. My movement story also started when I was 6 years old, and I realized that I made a grave mistake when I asked my mom for my mom at her restaurant job. And instead of saying the fake name that she used to be able to work, I accidentally said her real name. A 6-year-old boy just asking for his mom almost put her in danger of losing her job and our livelihood and the meager income that she had. My movement story started when I was 12 years old, and when a hyper state of war paranoia in this country, Congress created the Department of Homeland Security. And I saw in real time as the twin arms of xenophobia and imperialism reached out to squeeze the lives out of our communities, out of Muslim communities, out of Black communities, immigrant communities, and others. It also started when I was 17 years old, and I saw my father being arrested and sent to federal prison and subsequently deported a few years later. And it started when in each of those years where he was incarcerated and held in captivity, my family would visit him in West Texas, in a land of private prisons, where each town you drive through and see complexes full of private prisons and entire communities and towns built around to service them. And you would see the heartache of thousands of Black and brown families who would travel to these sites to visit their loved ones. It also started when I was just 26 years old in the summer of 2018, when at my current work, I saw and spoke to the families at the border who were torn apart by federal agents in that cruel summer. I was in the courtroom when a mother who was my age, she was 25 years old, spoke to me in court. And my job was to try to get her name, her information, so that I could try to follow up with her case and try to find her children. And see, when we were speaking to folks in court, we had less than 30 seconds for each individual person. And I needed to get all this information and make sure that they signed a waiver so that I could go and try to find their information. And each time, as I held up the paper and put the pen in their hands that were handcuffed in a federal courtroom in an air-conditioned room in South Texas, their hands would tremble and they would be crying as they tried to sign a document that would allow our team to go and try to find their children who had been taken from them the night before. And it continued just last month, when my team exposed a government black site in a hotel in McAllen, Texas, where the government is using a CDC order, an order that is meant to stop the coronavirus from spreading, instead is being used to secretly detain, hide, and expel people in the cover of darkness. We found one hotel where dozens of Haitian families inside held up signs for the world to see saying, "Please help us. Please call us. Please know who we are." And when we tried to go in to provide legal assistance, we were violently thrown out by the private guards that our government contracts to help hold people in captivity while they're disappeared in the night. And sadly, We know that even though we exposed this one site just 3 weeks ago, there are thousands more other people in this country right now in hotels, government sites, places where we don't even know. These black sites where people are being held here in the Rio Grande Valley, but all over the border, who are waiting to be disappeared by this government. Because the ultimate aim of this administration has always been clear: to stop the migration of black and brown people to this country by any means necessary. In just 4 months of the coronavirus pandemic, the Trump administration has illegally expelled more than 70,000 people from this country. We don't even know who they are. We don't know where they went. There's no paper trail and there is no due process. But even though this struggle has been a part of my life since I can remember, right, both because I was born into it, but because I chose to fight, I know it's not new. We are told and fed the lie that we are a nation of immigrants, but we know this is not true. The very first immigration law in this country was designed to exclude people, the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act, which needed a federal intervention from the top court to even undo. But even before that, right, we know that this fight extends to 1857, when the Supreme Court found that the US Constitution was not meant to include American citizenship for black people, regardless of whether they were enslaved or free. You see, this fight is about me, but it is about all of us, and it's not about just immigration reform. It's about a fight against the systems that perpetuate the injustices that link our movements. Because make no mistake, our opposition knows how to take the brutal system of incarceration and exclusion that they have created and perfected during chattel slavery, and masterfully apply it to anyone it deems unworthy. The same tactics, strategies, and pain are applied across our communities. But I know deep down in my heart that if we come at it with our creativity, our solidarity, and our understanding across each other, across our movements, across our communities, we are going to win this fight. We're going to win in November. But I know that this fight is going to continue past November and probably beyond my lifetime or our lifetimes. But the thing that brings me joy in this moment is knowing that I am with y'all. I'm happy and energized to be in this fight, and I know we're going to win, and I'm excited to fight with y'all. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Alejandro and Zenen. We are deeply grateful for your time sharing your stories, which are painful, yet important to understand so we can bring full humanity to how we welcome the vital contributions of immigrants rather than punish them for the work they do for all of us to build this nation.